I have been obsessed with Unicorn Overlord for the past month. As someone who exclusively plays Fire Emblem, I find Unicorn Overlord's take on the tactical fantasy RPG genre extremely refreshing. The team building is super fun and varied, and you're able to explore the overworld and progress the story however you want, with some exceptions. Let's recap the story. Our protagonist, Elaine, is the runaway prince of Cornea, who escaped when Galerius and the Zenoiran army conquered his country, and soon, the world. For the next 10 years, Elaine grew up on the isolated isle of Palavia, where he befriended the very pushed love interest and deuteragonist, Scarlett. Circumstances demand that Elaine and friends return to Cornea and fight back against the Zenoiran, but upon our arrival, Scarlett gets taken. Our first priority is to rescue her by completing the main story quest, The Priestess Abducted. Upon completing it, we receive a message from the Great Sage, who tells us in order to save Hyrule, we must go to the 4 other countries and free their divine beasts before confronting Calamity Galerius. Just like Breath of the Wild, I can technically ignore all other main story quests and just go to the Cornea capital and access the endgame, even before saving Scarlett. Keyword here is technically, because if I were just to waltz in, it'd be impossible. I'd get stat checked. Hard. Though, with enough preparation, it should be doable. So, what would it take to beat the game pre-Scarlett? Well, only one way to find out. After selecting True Zenoiran difficulty because I'm no coward, I get past the tutorials and begin exploring the world. The only self-imposed restriction is not doing the Priestess Abducted main story quest, as that would obviously progress the story as intended and rescue Scarlett. Consequently, I cannot go into any of the other countries since Scarlett has all of our passports, so we're confined within Cornea. Besides that, we're free to do anything else, so I breeze through the early game chapters with the old reliable tactics. Travis avoids everything and takes no damage, Joseph cleaves through foes with the Runic Sword's magic attack, and Lex sits on the bench. These chapters are straightforward and painless, so there's not anything interesting to say about them, but I do have to make some crucial choices. Sometimes, characters will just automatically join the Liberation upon completing a chapter, like Rolf. But other times, the player is presented with 2 options in regards to a character's fate. Option 1 recruits them into your army, while Option 2 turns them down, which can range from just saying no to outright executing them. If you reject letting a character join, you are instead given an alternative reward of varying value. You can supplant the characters you miss out on with generic mercenaries of the same class, and since there's no downside to using generics over unique characters in battle, it very well could be worth rejecting characters. Within Cornea, they are as follows. By turning Gamel over to the Town Watch, you receive 10,000 gold. This gold is meaningless in the long term, but since Gamel wouldn't be able to join until Elheim, I can't get him either way, so there's no point letting him off the hook. Mandarin is the same case, as, if spared, he can only be recruited in Elheim. By executing him, we are rewarded with 15 Divine Shards, which is a lot of an extremely valuable resource. Monica's rejection reward is the same commodity, but double the amount, a massive 30 Divine Shards. Monica's in a pretty good class, the Radiant Knight, but I could hire a generic Radiant Knight to replace her. I'd much rather get the head start on Divine Shards, because unfortunately, I'm going to need much more. Morden, Nina, and the duo Melisandre and Colm's alternative reward is 30 honors each. Honor is like the easiest currency to grind for if you really try for it, so I'd much rather recruit all 4 of these characters. Notably, Morden is a special case. Not only is he based, he has an outside of battle purpose by being able to build bridges. In Cornea, these bridges actually lead to 2 of 5 potential entry points for the final chapter. If you prematurely send Auk to the Great Beyond to meet his late mother, you get a Lapis Pendant. However, there's also this big face thing near the town right above the mines. To my knowledge, Auk is the only one capable of truly examining it, and you receive, oh hey, a Lapis Pendant. So the only difference is taking Auk or not, so I decided to keep the boy. Refusing Berenice also gives the same reward. However, unlike Auk, I don't think Berenice can find a Lapis Pendant in the way that Auk can find one when in your party. Having more lapis pendants is always a good thing, but I'm quite fond of Berenice, and the sellsword class is pretty rare within Cornea borders, so she's tagging along. If you end the experiments, Tatiana will not join the Liberation, instead giving us 5 elixirs, which are an endgame item that revives and restores an entire unit's HP to full. These may come in handy, as I'll be punching above my weight class later on, so I skip on Tatiana. There's more than enough generic clerics for hire, and you can even hire ones with plague masks, so I can just pretend this one is Tatiana. A cleric that cannot be so haphazardly replaced, and the final character we'll talk about in this section, is Sharon. First, let me tell you the benefits of recruiting Sharon. Beyond just being a cleric, she comes with one of only 2 lucky coins in the entire game in her inventory. She can inspect cemeteries in the overworld, which gives access to that questline and the respective rewards. And she's a prerequisite for recruiting Oclise, the only angel and only non-human class I can access in this challenge. And recruiting Oclise fulfills a quest that gives you a lapis pendant and the even rarer carnelian pendant. So, what's the alternative reward for giving up on Sharon and everything she provides? A hollowed mace, which you can just buy in the town for 5,000 gold. Yeah, I'm gonna just take Sharon, I think. To reiterate, until we rescue Scarlett, we cannot leave Cornea, so everything we have is limited to what's within Cornea's borders. In terms of characters, we have Elaine, Lex, Joseph, Chloe, Hodrick, Clive, Travis, Aubin, Rolf, Bruno, Sharon, Oclise, Ock, Morden, Yana, Bernice, Adel, Melisandre, Colm, Nina, and Selvi. Technically, Scarlett and Fran joined our army, but they have the abducted status, which means they can't be deployed. But I can take their stuff. I opted to get the 30 divine shards by telling Monica to stay home, and I got the elixirs for stopping Tatiana from curing cancer. I also got the 10,000 gold from throwing Gamel into the clink, and 15 divine shards from executing a Mandarin. But I couldn't recruit these 2 anyway because I would have had to go to Elheim. Of course, I can reinforce my army by hiring generics at the forts. I have access to all human classes, with the exception of Arbalists, Dark Knights, and Wyvern Knights. Some classes come in scarcer quantities. For instance, I can only purchase 2 generic sellswords and 2 generic sword fighters. The shops have some neat accessories, like the Familiar's Choker, but most of the equipment is pretty lackluster. However, there's more gear than what's stocked on the armory shelves. Fortunately, we're allowed to explore the area where the Scarlett rescue mission takes place, which opens up a couple overworld quests. The cemetery quest with Sharon can be completed, and the nearby ruins has the Fated Journal, unlocking the Carved Stone quest that unearths the King's Blade Cornix, a 15 might sword that buffs all the user's stats by 5. There are also 5 hidden treasures that can be dug up once their respective map has been found from the mines. The mines are also the only replenishable source of divine shards, and if I want to purchase all the good gear from the divine shard shop, and believe me, I do, I'll be swinging my pickaxe here for some time. However, just getting equipment will not be enough to take on the endgame. I'll need to somehow train my army to go toe-to-toe with level 40 foes. After doing all the battle stages in Cornea, of course excluding the main story quest, the Priestess Abducted, the only spots I can fight in are the Sigil trials. I can replay these as much as I'd like, letting me grind an infinite amount of EXP books. Since my characters are comparatively higher leveled than the foes we face here, I receive very little experience in combat, so I just use my Oclise team with Hasting Call to repeatedly beat the map as fast as possible. In addition to the books, I consequently grind gold, honor, and renown. Compared to other mission types, you receive very little renown in sigil battles, but this is the only repeatable method of grinding renown in order to unlock promotions and 5-member units. After hours of mindless grinding, I can finally reach B rank and promote my characters, who are now all at least level 20 by virtue of the hundreds of EXP books I've earned. This means they are so high level that it takes an exorbitant amount of books in order to get a single level, so getting my entire army up to level 40 to match endgame enemies will take forever like this. But there is technically another option, another sigil. In fact, it's the highest level sigil in the game that gives you the highest tier EXP book. However, in order to reach it, we need to liberate Sorm Town, but we're underleveled by a difference of 15 to 20 levels, and, unlike my opponent, I can't have over 4 members in a single unit yet. Maybe I can compensate with equipment from the Divine Shard Shop? The stuff here is endgame tier gear, so let's see what they've got. Well, there's the Millennium Scepter, which grants the powerful attack skill, Trinity Rain. It attacks all enemies 3 times with magic, which is strong, but it is a charge move, meaning I would have to survive a whole turn until it can be unleashed. Oh, the shop also has the White Cat Ear Hood, granting Quick Impetus, which activates after an ally uses an active skill, letting them act again immediately. This interacts with charge skills, effectively eliminating the charge. Cool! But magic users aren't exactly fast, so the enemy will likely be able to wipe out my entire squad before I even have the chance to act. But with a good deal of grinding, I can get a sorceress to level 25 to learn Quick Cast, giving themselves maximum initiative and almost guaranteeing they go first. Great! Too bad about the minus 50% crit rate though. Although, I could offset with the soldier skill, Keen Call, which guarantees a critical hit. Huh. You know, this is really strong. I mean, maybe we could even do. The victory condition is to capture the enemy command post, but the map doesn't make this easy. We must first cross the bridge and avoid the magic mines, made more difficult by the sorceress on the watchtower. Not only are her magic assists strong, but she will very quickly unleash greater gravity, so we'll have to reach the tower before she drops my movement to basically a standstill. To start, I deploy Selvi, who leads the Trinity Rain team, and Rolf, who's here as ranged assist support. I double Selvi's movement with a Light Feather, and use her Valor skill, Clairvoyance 2, to buff ally accuracy by 50 when fighting within the circle. The fight on the bridge doesn't look favorable, so I have to use an Empowering Draught to boost my damage by 30% for a single battle, which is enough to turn the tides. This team is perfectly constructed. Selvi leads because her 6 stamina and her leader skill, Resist Magic Assist, ensures the team can survive against the Watchtower boosted Sorceress and fight many battles. Odric holds the front line to endure against any start of battle attacks. Yana is the Trinity Rain user, who uses Quick Cast to go first, and is supported with Selvi's Quick Impetus to neutralize the charge turn, and Chloe's Keen Call to guarantee a critical hit, and deal enough damage against these higher level opponents, as described before. Once the dust settles, Chloe can heal with First Aid, and we receive a ton of EXP because of how comparatively underleveled we are. Now that we can move past the bridge, I book it and reach the watchtower thanks to the Light Feather's double mobility buff. Even with Rolf's help, I barely don't have enough damage to get the kill, so I'm forced to use yet another Empowering Draught. In true Zenoiran difficulty, you are limited to 5 items per map, and I've already used 3 at this point, so I'll need to play more conservatively. In this fight, the enemy also has Quick Cast, but by giving Yana a Dove Plume, she has the higher initiative stat, and gets to go before the other Quick Caster. Rolf heads out to occupy the now vacant watchtower, but a unit of Legionnaires and Sainted Knights get in the way. Sainted Knights are one of the few counters to this Trinity Rain strategy, because they have superior magic defense, and their passive skill, Magic Barrier, can nullify all magic damage for an ally. Fortunately, Sainted Knights and Legionnaires typically don't attack, but on the off chance they do, Odric can take anything they throw out. Just as Rolf gets to the watchtower, reinforcements appear from the 2 enemy forts. Selvi's team can deal with them exactly as you'd expect, but these fights cost her precious stamina, bring her down to 1 stamina remaining before she's rendered immobile. At the very least, I got enough valor to deploy Oclisa's group. Bridget, the generic Griffin Master, does big damage against cavalry, made stronger thanks to Aerial Wing plus Inspiration, and Rosette, the generic Sainted Knight, can cleave through low resistance infantry with her Runic Sword magic attack. Finally, we're in a position to attack the command post. After setting up another Clairvoyance and fiddling with the team formation, I head into battle. Except the Wyvern, the opposing team is very magically defensive, and can live the critical Trinity Rain. Even though they're able to destroy my front line, Chloe remains untouched, and can take down the backline Sorceress with 2 long thrusts. Trinity Rain is not gonna cut it against the Paladin and Sainted Knight, so Oclisa's team takes over. After Bridget gets lucky with a couple inspiration-boosted crits, victory has been claimed for the Liberation. Red text warning be damned. Capturing Sorm is a great boon to our war effort. The armory here stocks very strong steel and spell steel weapons, a fantastic upgrade over the weapons I've been using, and the watermill on the left has an incredible spear, the Testarossa. Of course, the main reason for taking Sorm was to access the Sigil's trial, Zenith. Now that we have the Sigil, we don't have to worry about being underleveled ever again. Oh, mother! So good news, the non-boss enemy units are not as tough as the enemies in battle for Sorm, and 2, we have a much more lenient time limit and advantageous starting position, which means I can afford to play more defensively. I start by taking out the 2 nearby watchtowers, before sending in a Trinity Rain to reclaim Sormtown. As I take care of the wandering enemies, I run into a unit with druids. Their quick curse is able to thwart the Trinity Rain team, as it lowers Yana's damage and prevents critical hits. Unfortunately, the boss also has a druid on their team, alongside a bishop and 3 hard-hitting Lanchconnects. So the standard Trinity Rain and Prey strat is not going to work. However, Yana just learned a new trick during this stage. Ice Coffin. Freeze is one of the most broken afflictions in the game. Characters inflicted with freeze cannot act, and the status will only wear off if the frozen character is attacked. Yana begins by freezing the back row first, to prevent the bishop from curing debuffs with refresh. Then, Yana freezes the front row of Lanchconnects. And then... well, that's it, actually. I removed all attacks from the rest of the team, so we just wait and stand by until our inevitable win. It takes 3 battles to take out the Lanchconnects, leaving them vulnerable to be cleaned up by Oquis and friends, who all get to level 30 or higher thanks to Elaine's EXP doubling Valor skill, Royal Order. I would say I solved how to beat the Sigil map, but each Sigil has 2 variations. The other one, which I think is slightly harder, has 3 bunched up ranged assisters, a sniper in the watchtower, a sniper following aggressive swordmasters, and a shield shooter who hides in the forest. It's too dangerous to approach, so I use Yana's greater gravity to slow the sniper following the swordmasters. This way, I can let the others approach me without them receiving the aid from any ranged assists. Eventually, only the ranged assist users and reinforcements remain. I have Elaine sneak up on the watchtower from the south, and once that falls, the rest of the range assist users fall to Trinity Rain. All that's left is the boss, which is the same in both versions of the map, so that means this will be a breeze. Every time the Sigil is cleared, I'm rewarded with 5 Supreme Military Treatises, each one granting 10,000 EXP. Now that I know how to do both variants of the Sigil and my units are getting progressively stronger, I can now easily grind them. Hey, fun fact, did you know Joseph is bad? His base stats to level 20 are abysmal, and by the time he gets to level 43, they're still not good. However, from level 45 to the max level 50, he starts getting massive stat boosts, getting up to +5 per stat at each level. This lets him catch up to everyone else, and he becomes a normal, competent character, which is a redemption for a good at start, bad at end pre-promote Jagan archetype I could never have anticipated. The only reason I learned this is because I had literally trained all the rest of my army, including the generics, so I had to burn my EXP book somehow. And the reason I had a surplus of books was because I had to replay the Sigil battle hundreds of times in order to grind Renowned and reach A rank, which unlocks the maximum unit size, and means I'm ready to become the... The cutscenes preceding the final mission depend on your story progress and certain choices made over the course of it. I've only seen them after completing all other main story quests. We begin with the OG Liberation members looking over Unicorn Inn, joined by Scarlett, Senatio, Etelinda, and Rosalinda. Lex and Scarlett have a conversation reminiscing about their childhood and expressing their worry for Elaine. The scene changes to Castle Soldraga of Drakenhold, where we see Herman rallying the Drakenhold army to march towards their king Gilbert. That is unless you fail to recruit Gilbert initially. In that case, he's the one leading the charge to aid in the Liberation's final battle. So, yeah, if you didn't know, you can mess up getting Gilbert and Drakenhold. Like I did on my first playthrough. we return to Grand Corin and witness two generic vanguards threaten to murder some nameless townfolk. Don't know why they decided to make this a whole cutscene with dialogue as opposed to an establishing shot, but go off, I guess. Finally, we see Galerius summon his 4 retainers and prepare for battle. So, as opposed to doing every possible main story quest before Unicorn Overlord, how do the cutscenes change by doing as few main story quests as possible? First off, we only have the initial Liberation members present, and Lex's conversation changes to...
Guess this is it then. Who would have thought our best bet of saving Scarlett would be marching straight through the front door? Either way, we'll have plenty of catching up to do once we get her back.
The scene shifts to Pistorius, where the Bestrels remain controlled by Zenoiran, including our would-be friends, Morard and Ramona. They march towards Grand Corin, where the next cutscene plays. It'll just be the pointless one with those 2 vanguards off those poor people. Whoa, who in the...
Your orders, Lady Nobel.
More blood must spill. Why? What have we done to deserve such horrors?
What do you propose we do with them?
These fools are ill-suited to serve as hosts. And the gate to the beyond yet thirsts for sacrifice. Who are we to deny it? Kill them.
Oh, so there's evil Scarlett. Or I should say, Scarlett's body possessed by this Norbel. This cutscene has no meaning without Norbel, and she'd only ever appear here by doing this stupid pre-Scarlett challenge. Fascinating. That's it for the pre-battle cutscene differences. The Galerius and 4 Who's-Its cutscene is unchanged, and there's the typical preamble about taking the 4 command posts to access Grand Corin proper. Since I built the bridges and completed the respective liberation quests, I get to choose between 5 entry points for this battle, which will determine our starting position. I opt for the leftmost town and implement a pendulum attack, going to the right and defeating all normal enemies, then swing back to the left and capture the command posts. Between my 10 units, I'm capable of dealing with everyone who crosses my path. 4 of them are dedicated assist teams that can help out the other 6, which are as follows. Elaine's unit is a balanced fighting corps. With support from Clementine the Druid's defensive curse, Elaine cleaves through the debuff front row with spinning edge. Then Apolline the sorceress and Melisandre can finish off the remnants of the decimated unit, all while Rosette the Sainted Knight ensures the team stays healthy. Travis's unit is focused on evasion in order to facilitate the team's main damage dealer, Auk. He gets plus 50% magic attack from Sorcerer's Connection, and uses Fire Burst to attack all enemies at the end of battle. The Trinity Rain build I've been using in order to get to this point is the same, so Selvi has been replaced with a Cleric, and Clive is joined to increase the squad's mobility, as well as provide some extra firepower should that be needed. Oaklease's unit is also just as effective as before, but I threw in another Griffin Master for good measure. Berenice's unit hits pretty hard, but lacks great survivability since it has no way to heal itself. The team's main utility is to use the Breaker's Valor skill, Heavy Swing, to destroy barricades and traps, but they're no slouch in a fight. Finally, my best unit is Joseph's. This may sound like a joke, but Joseph and friends are genuinely strong. Sabine the Druid lowers all the enemy's initiative and evasion with Cursed Swamp, then uses the Phantom Staff's Phantom Veil to grant the front line a buff to evade one attack, though they usually don't need it. The 2 Great Knights, Adel and Rodrigue, attack first. They activate Cavalier Call, which buffs their row's attack by 20% before attacking a column with Wild Rush. Cavalier Call stacks with itself, adding up to a plus 40% attack bonus that Joseph can utilize with a devastatingly powerful Divine Cross. Cavalry spam may be a pretty basic strategy, but goddamn do it work. Meanwhile, my army's onto the 3rd command post. Instead of directly fighting Theodora, I just lame her out with the siege weapons that she tried to use against me. Before we can even start planning our assault on the final command post, packs of mind-controlled Bestrels appear from each corner of the map. Thankfully, their intent shows that they only care about attacking my units, and not taking any of my vulnerable, unattended forts. And all my units are together next to a bunch of siege weaponry. Ramona is taken out pretty unceremoniously in battle, but at least she didn't die as lame as Morag did. Sorry, bud. After the final general is defeated, the miasma clears and Galerius appears, taking control of all our allies. Since the Ring of the Unicorn hasn't been unbound, Elaine only has the base version of Cleansing. Fortunately, it still affects a wide area, and I have the Valor points to spare, so I can free my allies from their Berserk status and begin invading the castle town. As I order Joseph towards the center, I notice Norbel's unit. Scarlett? No, it can't be. Ah, but it can. This body belongs to me now. Norbel, High Priestess of the Zenoiran Church. Cease your lies! The ring will shatter this magic of control just as it has before. I fear you're mistaken, Prince. Tell me, have you any idea the despair she felt in her final moments? What do you mean? Long indeed did she wait for your rescue, never once wavering in her foolish belief in you. No matter how much it pained her, no matter how much humiliation her heart endured. Yet in the end, that help never came. And when the time arrived for me to inhabit this body, its owner's soul had long since perished. So you see, I am all that remains of your dear Scarlett. But that's not possible. Now, if you truly seek to repent for your failing, then you may die by my hand. It's what she would have wanted. Damn it! You'll not get away with this! Norbel is in Scarlett's promoted class, the High Priestess, and, in addition to the standard class skills, she has the Sanguis Mea, a staff with an HP draining attack that hits all foes, and the Bloodstained Ribbon, increasing all her stats by 3 and HP drain efficiency by 30%.
Plan to fight me, do you? Pitiful girl. Abandoned and betrayed by those she trusted most. Oh well, I'll just have to avenge her tragic death myself.
Return to me, Scarlett. I beg you.
Stubborn child. The girl is gone, never to inhabit this body again. I suppose I should commend you, though. Reaching the city without her must have posed quite the challenge. Yet, in the end, all it accomplished was forfeiting her life. Now, mourn your failure as I strike you down.
No. Forgive me. With me!
Over here!
I've had enough of you. Together!
Fight on! I'll enjoy this!
I got you! Steal your resolve!
Hold strong. Will aid you.
I've had enough of you.
Hold strong. I've only just begun. Crescent gun.
help. Together!
Hold strong. Coming in!
We fight as one!
Spurned until the very last. You have to win, Elaine.
With Norbel no more, I reclaimed the area around the castle until only one hurdle remains: Galerius. I decide Elaine's team is my best bet at surviving against Galerius, but I was only able to deal 60 damage. In true Zenoiran difficulty, Galerius has 999 HP. He'll heal for 200 HP after every fight, so whittling him down will work. I bring Elaine back and spend the next 15 minutes coming up with a unit to overtake the Overlord. After employing some weird tactics, I'm ready to face Galerius. He starts the battle with darkness armor, letting him negate the next 6 hits. Fortunately, Melisandre's Meteor Slash is a 9-hit attack, which is enough to tear through the armor. When attacked with an active skill, Galerius retaliates with Venom Touch, but it's futile since I made sure Elaine and Melisandre are immune to poison. Elaine uses Cavalry Slayer to reduce Galerius' AP and PP by 1, and inflict Guard Seal, which forces him to use his final PP on Abysmal Miasma. I force my back row to stand by for their first action, then Galerius gets his chance to use Chaos Unending, inflicting everyone with a random ailment. On the second action, Melisandre attacks to get rid of Galerius' damage negation, then Elaine takes the last of his AP with Cavalry Slayer, rendering Galerius as a defenseless punching bag for the rest of the battle. Now, it's time for my back row to make moves. Ocleus reduces Galerius' defense with Shield Smite, and then my Lenchkinex, Corrin and Katia lay on the hurt with Bastard's Cross, and keep the pain going with Bull Force. Well, they would, but I got unlucky with the afflictions. Katia is frozen, and thus can't do anything, and Corrin was her first attack due to being blinded. Since Elaine has the PP to spare, I gave him the Dancer's Bracelet to further buff my Lenchkinex with Powerful Call. In the end, I was able to deal over 200 damage, meaning I can actually make progress. Before I start the next fight, I can check the battle forecast, and I'm able to advance the RNG with ranged assists until I find the best outcome. And I repeat this until...
Twisted sucker! Futile. Cower in fear.
I have you!
The end is nigh!
And victory is ours! The Unicorn becomes one with the Overlord, all of our friends get new clothes, and the world becomes purple. Okay, I guess this is the bad ending. But an ending's an ending, so Operation Pre-Scarlet is a success. I went into this challenge completely blind, not knowing how the final map would play out without being on the true ending path. It was much kinder than I was expecting. For instance, I thought we'd get ambushed by more than just a single wave of bestials, and I even considered the possibility that we wouldn't have cleansing at all. Even so, that prescience probably wouldn't have changed the amount of grinding I had to do, which took up like 80 to 90% of the challenge, so it's tough for me to recommend trying this for yourself solely for the gameplay experience. However, narratively speaking, the Pre-Scarlet challenge delivered with Norbel. The game explains that Elaine and the Liberation took too long, and Scarlett died hoping for a rescue that never came, which I find hilarious. It's as if the developers in the game are mocking me for spending over 30 hours trying to beat the endgame instead of just rescuing Scarlett and playing the game as intended, and I think that's a beautiful meta joke. Of course, beating the game like this is far from unintentional. Norbel is in the class registry, meaning in order to fully complete it, you have to do the Pre-Scarlet challenge. Also, upon loading the clear data, the game literally tells you to rescue Scarlett. So, if you want to go full completionist and 100% the class registry, go do the Pre-Scarlet challenge yourself, but there's no point doing it on true Zenoiran. I haven't played Unicorn Overlord on a difficulty lower than Expert, but I assume grinding would be made faster and less tedious on the easier difficulties. Anyway, I still haven't gotten over my Unicorn Overlord obsession, so if you want to see more Unicorn Overlord videos or live streams, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you want to see from me, because I'll take any excuse to replay the game again. With that, I feel like I've been a little mean to Scarlett in this video, but it's also too late to start making amends, so I might as well go the full mile and break your heart too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, everyone.
What is it, Elaine?
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake.
But... I suppose I had wondered. Just be more careful next time, will you? Nobody else deserves this kind of heartbreak.